Hi, I'm Karen Large from FluteInAFew.com, and I'm also a flute professor at Florida State University. This is the teaching video for the 2020-2021 Florida All-State 9th and 10th grade band Piccolo excerpt. Before you watch, take a second to visit FluteInAFew.com to get the handout that goes with this excerpt. I've also got a performance video of the excerpt. Both links are below. First, a disclaimer. The ideas presented here belong to me alone and do not represent the Florida Music Educators Association. The big idea in this excerpt is to strive for expressive note and phrase shaping with syncopations that sound like violin retakes. And I'll explain that later. Keep your support engaged throughout and go for a very clear piccolo sound. You're playing the top line in a duet. In this particular duo, it's organized like a call and response. And in measure 20, you'll notice that the second part gets the call and then you have the response. Understanding that relationship's really important to playing your part correctly. I've recorded myself playing the bottom line so that you can play along with me. Phrasing and direction. Because a tempo has been given and that tempo is quarter equals 76, you should stick to that tempo. I know it's tempting to play faster or slower, but since they gave it to you, I think you should do that tempo. Long lines and forward direction are very important in this piece. Make sure you plan your breaths, plan a dynamic for every note. This excerpt is in F sharp minor, and I know that's not necessarily one you play very often. So in the handout, I've included the F sharp harmonic minor scale and arpeggio for you to look at. Dynamics. Remember that dynamics are relative. Only play as soft as you're able to maintain a good tone, and then from there, you'll place your other dynamics in relation to that. The little crescendos should be treated like broad accents, meaning you put some weight on the note and then you taper a bit. Don't think of it like a normal accent, boom! No. And don't think of it like a true decrescendo, dum. Neither of those are correct. So, for example, the first quarter note, bum, ba, da, 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 dum, bum, ba, okay? You need to add phrasing dynamics to show direction and musicality, and I've made some suggestions for you. In measure 1, I recommend crescendoing through the 2/16 notes at the end of the measure to lead to measure 2, and every time you have that gesture, doing that. In measure 3, I like to start mezzo piano because there's a sequence being set up. Measure 1, measure 3, measure 5 are a sequence. So if you grow each time, that will show forward direction. The pickup to measure 14 is going to be mezzo forte, and the 3 E sharps in measure 16, I use a decrescendo. I lead to measure 17 being mezzo piano. I like for measure 17 to be an echo to measure 14. I like to put a little retard on the 3 E sharps in measure 19 and then going a tempo in measure 21. And I also like to put some retard at the end of measure 30 leading into that last fermata note. For the trill in this excerpt, you're going to play it like this. But when you play the E sharp, F sharp alternating 16th notes, you should do real fingerings because it doesn't sound very good when you do this slowly, the trill fingering. Articulation and note lengths. Imagine all syncopated rhythms are like retakes on the violin. I've never played violin in my entire life, but I do know what it sounds like and what it looks like. So when a player is doing a down bow, and then they lift up and start again. That's what I think the syncopation should sound like. That you're going bum, ba, okay? Bum, ba, doing a retake versus bum, ba, where it's more connected. So imitate retakes on the violin, and I think that'll be perfect for the syncopations. Don't play the 8th notes super short. They can be somewhat short to provide the space for the syncopation, but they don't need to be dot. Okay. Some general piccolo tips. Many of you guys are flute players first and piccolo players second, and so hopefully these are helpful for getting your piccolo chops in order. Go for clarity of sound on every note. If you crack, go back and fix it. Don't say, oh, I know that I cracked, I'll fix it next time. No, fix it, because it's probably a habit. The piccolo cracks all the time. Keep your finger movements as small as possible. Adjust your embouchure to be like an octave up on the flute. For example, if I were to play this F, that's at the top line of the treble staff, my embouchure should be like how I play third octave F on flute. So not the one on the staff, but the one above that. That's how I get a really good sound. Most people are too loose with their piccolo embouchures. So just think an octave up, and that helps me. Also, you might want to adjust the placement of the piccolo on your bottom lip. I know I have somewhat full lips, and so I place the piccolo just a little higher on my lip than I do flute, and that really helps with aiming the airstream correctly. Breath control. You should always have at least 20% of your air left in your lungs when you take a breath. If you don't, your support begins to collapse and tone, intonation, and dynamics suffer. The written breaths are good, but you still have decisions to make, and I've got some suggestions for you. I would say don't breathe in the end of measure 2, even though there's an eighth rest, and then take a big breath in the end of measure 4. A very big breath at measure 9. No breath until the comma at measure 15. Breathe at measure 18. Take a big breath at 20. No breath at measure 22. A big breath at 24. A big breath after the C sharp in measure 28. And you can sip after the E sharp if necessary. And then that's it. Don't forget to engage your support muscles. It makes your breath go farther. So speaking of support, what is it? Support is the engagement of your abdominal muscles, obliques, intercostals, and back muscles, and it allows you to have a consistent airstream through all registers and dynamic ranges. It's incredibly important, and flutists tend to not support on low notes and also soft notes, but they should support all of the time. I like to think of it as a switch. So turn your support on before you start playing, and do not allow it to turn itself off except briefly when you're breathing. Support is when you engage those muscles that I talked about, and you can feel it. And you'll notice that if you've never played with consistent support, this will be work for you, okay? It's worth it. You will sound so much better. Mental training. Be sure to do mental training before your audition to set you up for success. So many people learn all the notes and work so hard, but if you don't mentally train, that's half the game. That's half of an audition, is how you prepare mentally for it. One of the things I like to do is think of a challenging audition. Maybe you'd have to play very early in the morning, or maybe your heart rate gets really fast. Maybe you won't be able to take as deep of a breath. Try to replicate these scenarios by playing at 7 in the morning, or running some stairs before playing, or taking the piece extra slow so you can feel what it's like to run out of air. Other ways to mentally train: play for as many people as possible. The feeling of auditioning becomes more comfortable the more you do it. Record yourself and listen back objectively. So when you listen back, pretend like it's not you. Finally, develop a phrase or a mantra that reminds you of how you play when you play your best. And you might even want to write it at the top of your page. Good luck. Best wishes. Contact me if you need anything. The flutists in Florida are talented and motivated, and you're going to do a great job.